What is going on, guys? It's Combat Muffin, and I am back after way too long, but I am back. And today, we're ranking the 4 DLCs of Battlefront. We're ranking them 1 through 4. That is the Outer Rim DLC, the Bespin DLC, the Death Star DLC, and the Rogue One DLC, ranking them 1 through 4. And once we do that, we're going to give a review of the game of Battlefront in its entirety since all the DLC content has been dropped. It's been an amazing game. I've been so happy to be able to play it. And now that it's pretty much complete, I'd like to give my thoughts on the game in its entirety. Now, as with any ranking or listing video, I just like to say that my list might be different than yours, and that's totally okay. It's strictly opinion. I will be giving the facts, but mostly this is just my opinion. So yours can differ from mine. That's totally okay. So let's jump right into it. In first place, for the best DLC, in my opinion, it has to go to the Bespin DLC. Now, some of my consistent viewers will be questioning this, considering the fact that in my past, my only negative video that I ever posted was a 5 things wrong with the Bespin DLC. So some of you might be wondering why I'm saying it's the best. Well, it turns out that all 5 of those things that I said were wrong were either fixed by the developers or they actually came around to me and they grew on me, and I really like them now. Now I think that the Bespin DLC is by far the best DLC. To start off, I'd like to say that the maps that DLC brought were fantastic. For example, my favorite map in the entire game as a whole is probably the Bionic Laboratories. A perfect map, a non-symmetrical map, but it's just a really great time playing Blast, Drop Zone, Sabotage. It's a really even map, and I love it. The carbon freezing chambers I didn't like before, and now I like it because you got to be able to use star cards that you wouldn't traditionally use on larger maps in Walker Assault. Cloud City is another great map. They added Walker Assault, which they didn't in the Outer Rim DLC, nor the Death Star DLC, which is my favorite game mode personally. And they added a fantastic new game mode, Sabotage, which not only allowed for large amounts of players playing against each other, but allowed for 4 heroes to be used on both sides, so you get to use heroes more frequently, which is an optimal part of the game. And it just allowed for more interesting gameplay, trying to disarm 3 or arm 3 bombs that were about to go off, and after that you have to capture a point as the Imperials. That was a really fun game mode, and I loved it a lot. In addition to the maps and the game modes, the heroes that were added came around to be very balanced and very interesting, fun heroes to play, as well as the weapons. The X8 Night Sniper started off a little bit weak, but they really brought it up, and now the EE4 and the X8 Night Sniper are even. And that's pretty much why the Bespin DLC for me is the best DLC that dropped in Battlefront. It's well-rounded, even, and fun, and that's why it's number 1 on my list. Moving on to number 2, it goes to the last DLC that was added, the Rogue One DLC. Perhaps the most intriguing part of the Rogue One DLC was how much the new game mode, Infiltration, reflected the events that actually happened in the movie Rogue One. Additionally, that game mode is just very fun. It has 1 space battle, which is perfect amount, and 2 land battles, which is also the perfect amount. It has a lot of people playing on both sides, allows you to get heroes, and a lot of kills. Just a really fun game mode. Additionally, the weapons added were very versatile and interesting weapons to be able to play with. Perhaps the only downside to this DLC that I can think of is the heroes. While Krennic was a very well-rounded hero in my opinion, I feel like Jyn just didn't feel special enough. She didn't feel like you could really take on a lot of people. She felt too much like a common soldier. But other than that, I'd say the Rogue One DLC is a fantastic DLC, and that's why it's in second place for me. On to third place, and in third place, we have the Outer Rim DLC. This was the first DLC to drop, and it had plenty of content. What's actually really surprising is that this DLC dropped so many more weapons and star cards than any of the other DLCs. It dropped 4 weapons and 3 new star cards, which is pretty impressive. All 4 of the weapons were really interesting, although in today's Battlefront they're kind of underused because the weapons that came out in the new DLCs are a little bit more superior. And the star cards are also very interesting. But my biggest gripe with this DLC was that the heroes were just too usual. Of all the heroes, These ones were pretty much already in the game, and when I say that, I mean that between the 6 abilities, between 2 heroes, each hero having 3 abilities, they had 6 abilities total, and guess how many of those abilities were new abilities that weren't already in the game? Just 1, and it was from Greedo. All of 9 Nub's abilities were already in the game, and 2 of the 3 of Greedo's were also already in the game. And that was a little bit upsetting, because I was looking forward to something new. Additionally, there was no Walker Assault, which, as I mentioned before, is my favorite game mode. It was all short-sighted games, which is fine, but I really like to be able to play on Walker Assault with the new maps and the new weapons, but that didn't come in the Outer Rim DLC, which is why it's in the 3rd place position for me. And in 4th place has to go to the Death Star DLC. And my issue with the Death Star DLC was that half of it was great, and the other half was crap. The half that was great was the weapons and the heroes. The heroes were Bosk and Chewbacca, 2 of my favorite heroes. Bosk is probably my favorite, being that I got 115 kills with him once. And Chewbacca is also a very well-rounded hero that you can really get in the face of the enemy and get a lot of kills. Both of them were really fun to play with. And the weapons were also really interesting. They both introduced the secondary fire function, this being the TL-50 and the K-16 Briar pistol. And it really mixed up how we use weapons today in Battlefront. Versatile attacks, long-range attacks, they were both really interesting. And that was the real success of the Death Star DLC. However, the other half was the maps, the game mode, and the DLC itself. Perhaps the biggest letdown of this DLC was the game mode. And the game mode is probably the most iconic mission in Star Wars franchise. It was blowing up the first Death Star, and in this game mode it just takes too long to go to that point, and too many space battles, which for many are quite laborious, and that's just not fun. Additionally, the maps were just too close quarters, too cramped, too many corridors. It's just grenades and scan pulses ran supreme, and it didn't really allow for many star card variations and versatility. When Battlefront first came out, I saw an amazing game, but it still lacked content. However, over the years, it dropped more DLC content and became the more well-rounded game that we know today. As I look back, I see a game that had amazing gameplay, complemented by splendid graphics, and it allowed us to immerse ourselves in the amazing world that is Star Wars. Battlefront allowed us to partake in iconic events that actually happened in the Star Wars movies, as well as allow us to be iconic individuals like Luke Skywalker, like Darth Vader, and like Han Solo, and many others like that. But Battlefront came up short in a few arenas, one of them being game mode variation. There are plenty of game modes to play, but I really only did 3 or 4. I don't know about you guys, but Walker Assault was a traditional one that I would always go to. Sabotage is another. Infiltration is one more. And I didn't really do much of anything else. And those were the really big things that I did. And it's unfortunate that I didn't have the drive to play the other game modes, because the other game modes are interesting, but they're not really the same. Another one is character customization. There was some options to do that, but not as much as I would like. Also, star card variation. I was expecting there to be more star cards than there were in the game. And as DLCs began to drop one after the other, the amount of content that was released in each one began to wane. And there was less star cards, less weapons added for each DLC as it came to Rogue One. Despite this, overall, I'd say that Battlefront is the best game that I've ever played, and I'm so happy to be able to have played it, and I'm really looking forward to Battlefront 2. Many of you have probably seen some of the gameplay. It looks amazing. It looks fantastic. They're really bringing it back to what the original Battlefront was. There's going to be some story modes. There's going to be classes, new eras to play in, and I just can't wait because it's going to be so amazing, and I will be covering it because that is going to be an amazing adventure. And that pretty much does it for me. Be sure in the comments below to comment what are your top 4 DLCs. Rank them 1 through 4. That is the Outer Rim DLC, Bespin DLC, Death Star DLC, and Rogue One DLC. Be sure to put that in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. As always, my name has been Combat Muffin. I'll be back. I'll see you guys on the other side.